I'm sure you've heard some form or variation before of the sentiment that the moment you start going to extreme measures to pursue some sort of divine or personal mission or calling, that there will be those that rise up from out of nowhere to either metaphorically or physically oppose this sort of personal mission statement or calling statement, to deride you from accomplishing said goal because they'll think that it is weird. And this will cause you to feel lonely or stupid, I would say, and foolish for even coming up with the idea to begin with. Or maybe if you're a Christian, for instance, or whatever you may be, you may think that it's sort of a divine appointment and that you believe that something beyond yourself is calling you to go do something. And then there will be those that make you feel like a fool. I think over in England, they call this tall poppy syndrome, where they cut down poppy plants, they get taller and then you cut them down. And so there's this syndrome over there where when you start saying you're going to do something that is outside of the norm, people will have negative remarks about it to sort of stop you from going outside of what is comfortable for them to perceive you as. I've been reading the Bible, obviously, through Matthew chapter 10 still, and I'm at the point where we are in verse 24, and I'm going to be reading today all the way through verse 42. And this pertains to this sort of philosophical quandary that we instantiate in ourselves whenever we try to go outside of the norm of what either our parents would say or think, what our friends would want to believe us as. And this also connects to how I feel that Christianity, mainstream Christianity, as a whole, many pastors sort of circumvent some of these things that Jesus said. For instance, the title of this video, Jesus is bringing a sword. That is a controversial statement. That is one that people would kind of give you a sort of, what do they call it? The stink eye. They'd give you the stink eye for saying that in a lot of Christian circles. I really haven't heard a pastor say that Jesus is coming to bring the sword. And this is a statement that Jesus said himself. He actually said, I am coming to bring the sword, not peace. That's a wild statement, and it's controversial. That's not one that you would want to throw out as like a blanket statement to new believers, perhaps, without providing them the context of what that actually encompasses. And the reason it's could be so detrimental today is our attention spans have been getting attacked, I would say, through the tools provided to us in the digital landscape and the communities provided to us, through social media. And our attention spans is based around viewing 60-second clips, and it's getting smaller and smaller every day. When we start to move towards accomplishing something that is greater than a current version of ourselves, and then we also at the same time submit ourselves to the sort of messaging that goes outside of what we currently believe, when that message isn't provided the correct context, we can twist and contort it, and it'll stop us from ever accomplishing the goal to begin with. So if I have someone that I want to introduce to Christianity, I would bring them to church, and if my pastor said, Jesus is coming to bring the sword, what do you think they would think? What would they believe if that pastor was not good at providing the context? And what if that person was not set up in a psychological manner to even correctly interpret the context that the pastor provided? It's a slippery slope. And so today I'm going to be reading Matthew 24 through 42. It's a long one, but it speaks to both how when you are striving for your calling, there are going to be those that hate you, and we can withdraw examples and philosophical constructs that we can form our thoughts through or filter our thoughts through that Jesus provided in order to move past the hindrances and bring about the calling and the purpose in our lives that we feel destined to accomplish. Because there are going to be those that definitely try to get you off the path. Because when they see others going outside of what they know is their norm, it's going to be acting as a mirror that reflects to them everything they're not doing. That can happen. Or people don't like it when you go out of character or their perceived character of you. And religions, they don't like it when you go outside of the norm either. And I'll speak on that more as I read this text. And so without further ado, I'm actually going to start at verse 16 because it provides context, like I was just saying. It sort of sets the stage for what we're going to be speaking on today. Okay, Matthew chapter 10. So this is the point where Jesus is talking to his disciples and he's saying, hey, you're going to go preach the gospel. You're going to go enact the philosophies that I just have embodied and been showing you. They've been seeing him perform miracles and teach people the gospel. And now it is time for them to go spread the word to the people, to the lost sheep of Israel. And he forewarns them that they are going to encounter resistance. That's essentially where this is, okay? So he's handing off the responsibility, not handing off, he's carrying the responsibility himself too, but he is also now instructing the team, now it's time for you to get involved. All the things I've been training you in, go and do it. So we'll pick up Matthew chapter 10, verse 16. I am sending you out like sheep among wolves. Therefore, be as shrewd as snakes and as innocent as doves. Be on your guard. You will be handed over to the local councils and flogged in the synagogues. On my account, you will be brought before governors and kings as witnesses to them and to the Gentiles. But when they arrest you, do not worry about what to say or how to say it. At that time, you will be given what to say, for it will not be you speaking, but the Spirit of your Father speaking through you. Brother will betray brother to death, and a father his child. Children will rebel against their parents and have them put to death. You will be hated by everyone because of me. But the one who stands firm to the end will be saved. When you are persecuted in one place, flee to another. Truly I tell you, you will not finish going through the towns of Israel before the Son of Man comes. The student is not above the teacher, nor a servant above his master. It is enough for students to be like their teachers, and servants like their masters. If the head of the house has been called Beelzebul, how much more the members of his household? So do not be afraid of them, for there is nothing concealed that will not be disclosed, or hidden that will not be made known. What I tell you in the dark, speak in the daylight. What is whispered in your ear, proclaim from the roofs. Do not be afraid of those who can kill the body, but cannot kill the soul. Rather be afraid of the one who can destroy both soul and body in hell. Are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? Yet not one of them will fall to the ground outside of your Father's care. And even the very hairs of your head are all numbered. So don't be afraid. You are worth far more than many sparrows. It then goes on to verse 32. Whoever acknowledges me before others, I will also acknowledge before my Father in heaven. But whoever disowns me before others, I will disown before my Father in heaven. Do not suppose that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to turn a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. A man's enemies will be the members of his own household. Anyone who loves their father more than me is not worthy of me. Anyone who loves their son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. Whoever does not take up their cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Whoever finds their life will lose it, and whoever loses their life for my sake will find it. Anyone who welcomes you welcomes me, and anyone who welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me. Whoever welcomes a prophet as a prophet will receive a prophet's reward, and whoever welcomes a righteous person as a righteous person will receive a righteous person's reward. And if anyone gives even a cup of cold water to one of these little ones who is my disciple, truly I tell you, that person will certainly not lose the reward. If you made it through that reading, I congratulate you. You have a greater attention span than I think probably at least higher than the average attention span here in the population right now of the earth. So I would say anyone that has internet. So there are very controversial statements in that chapter, aren't there? There are many things that Jesus just said that I have never heard a pastor really say. And if I have, I've always heard it out of context. You always hear verses and messages on Sunday that are taken from a chapter and they are surrounded with flowers and sort of nicely scented metaphorical candles to acquire more souls into the kingdom of God, which I think is proper. Yet at the same time, it speaks to what I believe is mainstream Christianity's fear of preaching the truth because they don't want to dissuade those that believe in things that are completely outside of it. I really do. I think that pastors are afraid to preach things like this or state that Jesus said he did not come to bring peace but a sword. And I would be too. I am too. Making this lecture is not easy, but I think it's something that needs to be done. And it speaks to subject matter that is extremely important to us. And it's important to correct the path of those that are walking upon one that is created by the current philosophies that our culture propels. That's what I would say. I'll start going through the verses and just my takeaways that I've created in my studies. Obviously, Jesus is telling them there's going to be resistance, like I was stating earlier. They're going to be flogged in the synagogues. There's going to be people that hate you. And I spoke on that last week or the week before last week. I upload a week ahead of time nowadays, so it's hard for me to remember which one I spoke on. Nevertheless, the phrase "because of me" in verse 22, "you will be hated by everyone because of me." I just want to clarify that when he says "because of me," he's stating because of my name, right? And you can think of this philosophically as there are titles that you give things, and just saying them will trigger somebody. It could be not even directly the thing that you were speaking on at that moment, but if you just say it, maybe it will graze upon some sort of past trauma that they have, and they'll just be triggered. Okay? Now, Jesus is saying that you speaking on things in his name, it's going to anger a lot of people, and people are going to rise up, and you're going to be flogged for it. I explained what flogging was, where they take leather straps and whip you in a synagogue while they recite some verses from Deuteronomy, and that harkens back to the Old Testament times. And it was brutal. And Jesus is telling his team, like, hey, this is going to happen to you. And you are to be a force that sends out the truth to the world regardless. You are to carry your cross regardless. And so he's saying, you will be hated by everyone because of me, is essentially saying because of his name. And now with verse 24, the student is not above the teacher, nor a servant above his master. It is enough for students to be like their teachers and servants like their masters. If the head of the house has been called Beelzebul, how much more the members of his household? So Beelzebul is something that referred to a demon. Okay, so he was saying that basically a demonologist. He's somebody that interacts with spirits that are outside of Christianity. Remember, Jesus was hated by the people that he came here to save, which would be the Pharisees of the days, the Jews, his chosen people. And they were saying that the miracles he performed are not because of any godly power. It is because of powers that are sourced from enemy spiritual forces, demonic forces. And he says, do not be afraid of them, for there is nothing concealed that will not be disclosed, or hidden that will not be made known. What I tell you in the dark, preach in the daylight. This touches upon a subject that is personal to me, where I'm creating these lectures here, these messages. You could even say they are sermons. And they are contentious in my own personal life a little bit because I'm already very, very busy. I have my dream job, and it's something that I prayed for. So I have these responsibilities given to me through a vessel that was provided to me by God. And it's something that I prayed for years to come to pass. And it's here now, but it accompanies, there are responsibilities that are attached to it that I have to uphold. And I have to properly orient how I expend my time, the people that I'm around. And I also have to go back and self-examine myself to make sure that I am on the proper path that God wants me on when it comes to both preaching sermons like this, giving lectures like this, creating them, and carrying the responsibilities that I prayed for in that other area of my life. You can be called to two different areas at once, and many are. I think we all are, actually, because our life is sectioned. Our life has multiplicitous properties to it where there's so many different components of our life all the time. And there's a hierarchy that we have to properly organize our values in direct relation to what God is calling us to do. And it becomes hard to organize and prioritize the middle stuff. God is up at the top. That has to be, or else everything goes out of whack. But the middle things, the things that you are purposed to do, when it becomes more than just one, it's hard to configure it in a way where you know that you are honoring God in the beginning. I believe that's hard. And as you start to walk it out, God corrects you when you start to stray off the path too much. And so when Jesus is speaking, that he's instructing the disciples to speak on what he tells them in the dark or what he tells them in secret. What does he say exactly? He says, what I tell you in the dark, speak in the daylight. So the ideas that you get in your head, maybe this like personal calling that you feel led to do and no one else knows about it, walk that out in your life. Despite all the walls in front of you, sometimes the only way out is through. I believe that's usually the case. It really is. It says, do not be afraid of those who kill the body, cannot kill the soul. So it says, do not be afraid of the people that rise up against you. There's a whole nother aspect of life. There's a whole nother realm that we don't perceive with our normal five senses given to us by God. There's a spiritual landscape out there as well. And that can become something that is missed to all the different people in the world. And we take it for granted all the time. Like it's hard for me to think about how there are spiritual forces trying to stop me and trying to push me forward all at the same time, because I get so caught up in the things that are right in front of me. Like psychologically, we don't have the processing power to pick up everything at once. Like when I've spoken on before, when you walk into a room, you don't just notice all the million different things or else your brain would explode. You'd become psychotically deranged. And so it's hard to properly organize these callings that you're called to, while at the same time taking into account that there are forces that you cannot perceive with your natural senses that are trying to both help you and stop you. But Jesus is telling them the command to go forward despite all negative obstacles. God will guide you through all of it. He will be there to stop those from deleting you or deleting your purpose, deleting the positive effects from your purpose, as long as you carry your cross properly. He states in these verses he talks about sparrows. He's saying that, if God will take care of birds and sparrows, won't he take care of you? You are the greatest creation that he has made. He loves you. He has numbered all the hairs of your head. So don't be afraid of those that come up and protest your sort of personal mission statement. And when you start to enact behavior that they think is weird, It probably is a positive sign. It is a positive sign. It means you're on the right. You are going in the right direction. I wrote down here this is kind of personal to me. It says, I need not be afraid of the opinions of others. That speaks to the verse 26. I need to speak in the daylight what I feel God placing in my heart. I just explained that. I know that if I continue to do this, God will show me how I am to properly orient the different activities in my life and the time that I need to allot to each of them. There will be certain seasons when I need to spend an hour and a half every single day creating lectures like this. There will be another season when I need to spend an hour and a half maybe helping somebody who is in a really rough spot in life. And that's going to minimize the time that I can create lectures. And what I mean by that is there's going to be times when I am trying to preach to the masses and times when I need to intimately interact with somebody else to help raise them from the psychological hell that they find themselves in, or maybe physical. Okay? We only have so much time in a day and so much bandwidth. But with God, all things are possible, and He will correct your path as you move forward. And I know that there are some statements in these verses here where it says, 32, whoever acknowledges me before others, I will also acknowledge before my Father in heaven, but whoever disowns me before others, I will disown before my Father in heaven. There are verses here that are controversial. And I wrote down, I need to lose my life for God, because here He tells us, whoever acknowledges Him before others, He will acknowledge. Whoever disowns Him before others, He will disown. And I don't want people to misinterpret that and think that, hey, if I act in a certain way, I'm lost to God forever. That's not true. Look in the example of Jesus telling Peter that before the rooster crows, he will deny him 3 times. And what happened is Jesus was crucified, and Peter was at a campfire near some Roman soldiers, and they were asking him if he knew that Jesus guy that just got crucified, because they thought maybe he did. And Peter was like, no, 3 times. And then he heard a rooster crow, and then he started bawling because Jesus already told him that was going to happen. But when Jesus told Peter, Peter was like, no way, man, I'm ride or die. I will always own up to the fact that you exist, and I will always support you. But when Jesus was slaughtered in front of him, in front of everyone, and you have Roman citizens that are part of the government that sacrificed him, crucified him. That's an example of this physical world having a lot of power on our senses, and Peter taken for granted that there's a spiritual landscape out there as well. Yet later on in the story, after Jesus resurrects, he tells Peter, he says, what does he say exactly? He has Peter reiterate 3 times something that sort of reflects that Jesus is real and that Jesus loves him. And that is to directly fly at the face of him denying Jesus 3 times, or denying that he knew him 3 times. And so that shows that God will not disown you permanently. But that doesn't mean it's not important. And that's something that I think is missed among mainstream Christianity today, is they don't preach on that. It's obviously important. If Jesus was telling his disciples, his team, that, hey, if you don't acknowledge me before others, I'll disown you. I think that's telling him, I know that that's telling them something along the lines of, if you don't acknowledge me, you're out on your own. But you acknowledge that I exist, and you properly orient yourself within my world, because this is God's world, you will see the miracles that come to pass. And you will see the purpose in the suffering that you have to endure when you go through certain hardships in order to bring about the purpose that God has for you in certain seasons of your life. Remember that as you go through different trials, and be mindful not to dismiss the fact that God exists. And I also wrote in here, this is kind of a personal rant. It should be a public rant. I wrote, Christians today read verses in the Bible before they go about their day in the same sort of manner as they ingest social media pertaining to the subject of self-development. And when you read your verse of the day, let's say you use the Bible app, you get this like dopamine kick of you acknowledging that there's a spiritual landscape out there and you believe that there is this heavenly Father out there that looks out for you. All that is true. But I think what happens is people kind of use that as this self-serving dopamine provider, and then they go about their day knowing that God will guard them, and they don't actually sacrifice anything or go outside of their own comfort zone to bring about what God would want them to. Not too much. And I think the constant psychological, what would I say? Psychological conditioning that social media has administered to us through the viewing of clips over and over. I think many Christians interact with their Bible verses in the same way. They ingest it, then they go about their lives. They don't really change anything. And then they'll just keep ingesting new verses day over day over day over day. And they don't change anything, actually. And it's really dangerous with Christianity because they know that God will forgive them. That's a part of their religion. They know that even in, like what I just spoke on, Peter denying Jesus 3 times, Jesus still accepted him back into his arms, which he will. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't go about carrying your cross and lowering yourself before others, serving others, furthering God's kingdom in a way that causes you to lose your life for God. There's verses in the Bible all over the philosophy of losing yourself to God. Putting yourself last is how you come first. Losing your life to God is how you find it, how you gain it. It's because of the whole inversion of being self-righteous. Selflessness is how you positively produce, I want to call it art. I would say it is art in some sense. It is how you produce an effect in the world that will bring about sort of metaphorical roses. Okay, it's like you planting a garden. And you'll see the positive effect of you selflessly serving others or doing things out of the goodness of your heart. And that takes sacrifice. It takes you doing things that you don't want to do. It takes you talking to people you don't really want to talk to or maybe even care about, but you just feel led to. You know that they have it worse than you, or perhaps they have it better. It doesn't matter if they have it worse than you or not. It's just you do things for the betterment of others and not for the purpose of just uplifting yourself. It's true selflessness. And I think that's something that's lost among Christianity today and how it is enacted. I think social media and the digital landscape has poisoned it and corrupted it for sure. With our relationship with the Bible and with how we translate the Bible, translate the philosophies that Jesus embodied and the philosophies that he instructed us to embody ourselves. I'm hoping that we can get back to the selfless sort of path that is fearless. And here we come to verse 34 now, where it says, "Do not suppose that I have come to bring peace to the earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. For I have come to turn a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. A man's enemies will be the members of his own household. Anyone who loves their father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. Anyone who loves their son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. Whoever does not take up their cross and follow me is not worthy of me. Whoever finds their life will lose it, and whoever loses their life for my sake will find it." This is a hard verse for people to accept. I don't know if I've ever heard a pastor even talk about it. Jesus right here saying, I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. And everyone knows this to be true in some sense already. It sounds controversial, yet there are aspects of it that we see all the time. When you start dropping truth bombs in certain social circles or in online digital social circles, you'll see people just explode. Even now, if this YouTube video blows up, for instance, there's going to be so many people hating. There's going to be so many people just saying, you're an idiot. Cut your hair. I'm not going to listen to somebody with their ear pierced. I'm not going to even accept this. You are a false prophet. You are a heretic. They will hate you. And think about what happened to Jesus when he went to his hometown. They couldn't see past the concept of what they knew him as up to that point. So he didn't even perform miracles there. Well, he did, but it said not many. And Jesus was astounded at their lack of faith. He states here that he has come to turn a man against his father, a daughter against her mother-in-law, a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. That's because, let's say one person in a household becomes a Christian. They start trying to preach that to their family members. What do you think happens? What happens? What if your household is filled with atheists? What if you just start slamming Christianity down their throat? What happens? It's chaos. And it's not a positive sort of chaos. And you can take the Christianity out of it. When you start passionately conveying truth to people, that starts acting as a reflective mirror, showing them the things that they are doing wrong, people get pissed. They become angry, offended. And it could be things that you don't even know why they're mad. But as I was speaking on earlier, it could correlate or tether back to something that happened to them years and years ago. Maybe it's something from their subconscious that they don't even realize. It could be just some mental disorder or past trauma that just gets triggered when a certain subject matter is touched upon, and they're not even conscious of it. This happens all the time. And Jesus, think about the philosophies that he was speaking on. Think about the people that he was speaking to. These are worshipers of God, the Jews. He came here to save them. They say his healing power is coming from demonic resources. They say he is a false prophet. They hated him so much that they crucified him. And there will be people that hate you too. Go click on any YouTube video that has a positive message. You will find people that hate it. There are people that don't want to believe that they can get better. Everyone knows that. And I think a lot of people are guilty of that. I know. I was just thinking to myself, I'm probably guilty. I am. I'm sure I'm guilty of that too in some manner. It could be consciously, subconsciously. I could know about it or not. Some people get so, you've heard of, what is it called? When a victim of abuse becomes attached to the person that is abusing them, and they start to psychologically transform the abuse into something that they need. I can't remember what that's actually called off the top of my head. Or when somebody is kidnapped, let me look it up. Stockholm syndrome. Psychological bond or attachment to their captor is known as Stockholm syndrome. That's where it is. And we can have relationships with behaviors or philosophies that we believe in the same sort of way. And whenever anybody says something that is outside of that, we can get just absolutely furious. And we can know these things are bad for us, but they bring us a sort of comfort. I guess overeating is a good example. People can know that it's bad for them, but it brings them comfort. Smoking cigarettes, drinking, having sex outside marriage. There's things that I do. Like I remember I went to a gas station late at night because I got called on an incident at work. And whenever I stay up late, I get these stupid sugar cravings. I think a lot of people do. And I hadn't had a cheat day for the week yet. So I went ahead and went to a gas station, bought a bunch of garbage food and ate it. And then the next day I felt bad about it, but it was bringing me comfort in that moment. But having that one cheat day during my week provides me comfort. Now that's a case where, let's say if I was eating that garbage food every other day, it would become even worse for me. But I could tell myself, yeah, but I do all of these other things. This is just, an innocent partaking in the rituals that may be providing me comfort that I need in order to do the things that give a positive benefit to the world. And we can twist the whole idea in our head to conform to whatever idea we want it to be. We can transform anything to be anything inside of our own heads. So it's hard when you start speaking truth to people and they start negatively reacting to it and you have no idea why. And you just have to trust what God tells you about that scenario and move forward. Remember, I don't know how many weeks ago, but I spoke on Jesus telling the disciples when they find a house that is deserving, they are to preach this message, obviously, but when the message is not received, they kick the dust off their feet and go. So that's an example of not allowing that negative interaction to stay with them. Do not harbor it in them in a way that will be a detriment to what God wants to bring through them. And I've had examples of this in my own life where I spent time with family members and I said things that made them angry, but I knew they were true and something that they needed to hear, but it started touching upon certain habits and behaviors that I could see from the outside were detrimental. And they just blew up. And you can have people verbally attack you like I was. And it wasn't anything that, it was hurtful, obviously, but I was surprised at first, yet when I read these verses and really thought about it, I wasn't. Because anytime you share the truth, that truth is a sword. And I think that is a good way of interpreting it. When Jesus said he did not bring peace, but a sword. Think about the sword cutting our understanding of things, right? It's slicing through this veil that is stopping us from seeing what God wants us to see. That's a good way to think about it. It's hard. Where does that bring us? Oh, and then following that, he says, whoever loves their father or mother more than him is not worthy of him. That's really hard. Or son or daughter. So you have to put God at the top of your hierarchy, and then that orders everything else properly. You can't love your son or daughter more than God. This is a philosophy that we struggle with actually living out. That's you saying, hey, you have to love God more than your daughter or son, both in what you say and what you do. You can't create a cognitive dissonance where there is a gap between what you believe and your behavior. That's what cognitive dissonance is. And there are tons of negative ramifications of that. And here, he's saying that anyone who loves their father or mother more than him is not worthy of him. So I interpret this as put God at the top of your hierarchy, period. Everything else gets ordered properly as a sub-level of that. God will straighten your path. He will help you. There's going to be those, like I've been saying this entire time, that are going to try to stop you from achieving the goal that you have in your heart. whatever God is telling you to bring about in the world. And you can't value anyone else's opinions more than what God has said about you or what you perceive God is saying about you. Which brings me to my next point. When you think that you hear from God, you should ask him again. Filter it through him again. And if you don't believe that you hear anything, start walking out what you perceive as him telling you to do, and he will correct your path if you return to him and seek his guidance and counsel and allow him to correct your path and direct you properly. But you have to be willing to give up whatever previous behavior you are actually following through with. You have to be moldable. You have to be selfless. You have to admit that I need God and I am broken, and he will correct my path, and have faith that he can. And from there, we come to verse 40. And it says, anyone who welcomes you welcomes me, and anyone who welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me. So there's a hierarchy there. Well, there's a connection there. There is, if you embody the philosophies that Jesus is stating, that means anyone who welcomes you welcomes him, because you are the physical manifestation of Christian doctrine at that point. If you are living selflessly, serving selflessly, they will be welcoming Jesus then. And if they're welcoming Jesus, they're going to welcome the one who sent him, God. There's an order to things. And he's saying, if anyone even gives a cup of cold water to one of these little ones who is his disciple, truly I tell you that person will certainly not lose their reward. There are rewards in life for enacting the correct behavior or doing the things God calls you to do, for enduring the hardships that are the trials that you need to go through in order to become the person that God is calling you to be. The whole part of carrying your cross, going outside of the norm, dealing with all of those who hate you. There is a process to it, and it hurts. He told his disciples, you'll be flogged in the synagogue. People will hate you because of me. Everyone will hate you because of me. Because of his name, because of the truth. So expect there to be negative opposition because you are trying to do something to better God's kingdom, to selflessly serve others. And it could be to better yourself as well, to be a better servant of God. I want it to be noted that pastors don't speak on it, but you can lose your rewards. Moses is a perfect example. God told him to bring forth water from a rock. Moses hit it with his staff, but he didn't follow the practices that God instructed him to. And this made it so Moses could not see the promised land. Moses was the one who led the Israelites out of Egypt. Moses died before they got there. God allowed him to see the promised land, but he could not go there with them. That shows us that we can lose our rewards. Now, Moses still accomplished his purpose of leading the Israelites out of Egypt, freeing God's chosen people. But he did not go to the promised land. He did not enjoy the fruits of his labor in the same way. He still went to heaven and enjoyed something way greater than any of that. But that's just something to keep in mind. There are consequences to going outside of the commands of God. Pastors don't talk about it, especially mainstream ones, because they want you to feel good. It's so interesting because in the self-development space, like in videos you see on social media relating to working out, everyone knows that the harder you work, the more the positive benefits are. But in Christianity, they don't. Preachers don't really speak on that a whole lot. They don't get a lot of clicks. And I think it shows how far we've fallen from the sort of selfless behavior that God actually wants us to enact. The secularization of Christianity is a tragedy. And I'm hoping that I can have an influence on bringing us back to the right path. That's what I hope. And I'll end this here. If you find yourself called to something greater than you, keep moving. Keep moving forward. Continually go to God for guidance and counsel and correction. Be open to criticism from God and from others that God uses to speak to you. Remember that when Jesus would perform miracles during his ministry, he would ask them, "Do you believe that I can do this?" There are many cases when he asked them that, and they said yes, and then he performed it. So it takes faith. It takes courage, not the absence of fear, but courage. It takes the willingness to face the monsters in the dark, whether psychologically or physically. God will give you the resources to break down barriers. God will give you the frame of mind to accept things that are uncomfortable to process. You can be somewhere a year from now that you would not have hypothetically projected in any way, shape, or form. No way. If you would have told me that I'm doing this, recording this video right now, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, I'd have been like, "You're an idiot." I may have been mad. God can transform you into something that is beyond whatever you believe you are even possible of achieving. And you can help others in doing so. And where you end up will probably not be where you initially maybe wanted or thought of, but it will be greater and it will be right. Having faith in God and a relationship with him is not believing that he will answer all of your prayers as you pray them, but believing in the fact that he will answer your requests with what is right. That's true faith. That's true love of God. Don't let the people that hate and not believe dissuade you from becoming something greater than what you currently are. God has great plans for all of us. If we will just lower ourselves to hear him and embody the philosophies that he wants us to, the philosophies that Jesus enacted here on the earth. And I'll leave you with that. I love you, and I thank you for listening this long if you have. And I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day or night. I'll see you next time.